Hello, this is Boomerhands with another video. What I have created is a compendium of all my knowledge about crew to hopefully give you a firm grasp on everything you need to know about them. We're going to be covering how stats affects rooms, the best FTP options pre-hole 10, what your first prestige should be when you hit hole 10, the progression of starting a crew from scratch to an absolute monster, how to perform gym training from start to finish, crew seniority, and selecting which crew is right for you and alt/trade partners. This is a mineral mining laser. It has a 4.13 second cooldown, and this is a Galactic Snow Maiden. This one has been max trained, and with the training and gear she has on, she has a 60.5 weapon stat. As you can see on the bottom image, when you place a crew into a room, its support bonus shows automatically when you inspect it. If you have multiple crew in one room, it will combine all the applicable stats together to form one support bonus total. The purpose of support stats is to reduce the time it takes to reload any charging room. Shown here is we applied the weapon support stat from Snow Maiden into a weapon reload calculator. Having this particular Snow Maiden reduces the firing rate of the mining laser from firing once every 4.13 seconds down to 2.57 seconds. For the F2P crowd, your options are pretty limited for what you get access to until you're able to hit hole 10 and learn the crew prestige research. Some of the crew available to you have some higher stats in specific areas, but these selected few are the best bang for your buck. For pilot, we have Christian with a solid 18 points and an urgent repair special. There are 3 solid crew for the science slot, but Gray Virtuoso and Tiffany are the most useful. I suggest running double Virtuosos and a Tiffany in your shield. For the engineering slot, I suggest running 9 Visuri captains in both missile rooms and auxiliary missile launcher. The McAlien faces remain king and queen for the weapon slot. For teleport users, we have 3 sound options: Ardent Star Huntress and both zombies. Star Huntress has a solid crit and above average attack for this bracket. Zombies have a powerful gas stat that is hard to beat even at higher tiers of crew. There are other options to choose from, but none will bring you as strong of a consistency as these crew at a free-to-play pre-hole 10 bracket. Once you have hit hole 10 and unlock prestige from the lab research, the very first thing you need to do is go create a Pixel Prestige account. Take the time to input your entire crew roster into the website, then go to the prestige calculator and see what you can build. Keep in mind that every 90 days the recipes change. It will let you know on the calculator page exactly when the new cycle is going to occur. So now we know the best place to find what crew we can make. What do we think is our best first legendary crew? Well, some people go straight off the rip with building a Lilith for their gun trip or a Bright Void Vector because they want to run Void Telespam. Some people also would say that choosing something with high science stat is almost always a solid decision because practically everyone uses it. Well, allow me to propose some alternative suggestions. My own personal thoughts behind it now after playing this game for a while and seeing many players walking through my halls asking what should be their first prestige, I'm going to have to say Repair Crew. The reason why Repair Crew is because of a few factors. Number 1, they are more guaranteed to be ran more than a science crew. Number 2, by the time you're ready to start prestiging, you should already have some pretty decent crew that are statted towards your specific archetype, but the jump from early to mid-game repairs to legend tier is absolutely massive. Galactic Sprite, the queen of repair in my opinion. Super high base HP, 3 walk speed, 3.3 repair with no need to dump any points to reach the 3 repair baseline. This thing is nuts, and that's not even including the fact that it has a super high base engineering to camp engines for evasion boost while waiting to repair, and it has a 7.5 second freeze timer to help with anti-boarding versus telespammers. The only drawback is that it absolutely collapses to Galactic Alchemist, with no real way of fighting it off. Which is where we have King Dong come in. The crew is the arch nemesis of the GA archetype. Raise attack up to 5, get some stamina, add 6 training points to repair and dump the rest into HP. Slap some fire resist gear on it, and you now have an absolute missile ready to smash GAs into a pulp. And when you don't fight into Galactic Alchemist, it gets to be a solid repair crew from the 6 extra training points, bringing it up to 3. Now let's say you don't like Galactic Sprite and you've had absolutely enough of Galactic Alchemist Arson. Well, here you go. This is Willy. A 2 walk speed crew with urgent repair. Really solid base stats in the boosting rolls, only need a touch of FR to put it into the point of healing and arson for the second alchemist it has to now deal with. Overall, a good pick for a UR crew. What if you had your heart really set on playing Telespam and needed a science crew to boost shields or cloak to reduce the amount of exposure your ship gets to the enemy EMP? Well, you're definitely going to need a Cyberduck. 2 walk and 3 run, solid ability stat perfect for rushing, and a hefty 27 science stat. This thing is incredible. Well, since I've already talked enough about her, it's time to show her as my final pick. You have decided to join the Dark Forces with this one. This thing is so powerful it spawned its own archetype. No one would question why you would choose this as your first legendary crew. So now you have decided to create your first legendary crew, and you've decided to just forget everything I said, you love Frozen, and you had to have Elsa on your ship. Well, since you are a gunship, this is going to be easy. This doesn't just apply to legendary crew either, but any crew you decide to build out. What I'm going to present to you is a step-by-step instruction on how to get your crew from a nobody to godhood. This crew loadout builder can be found on Pixel Prestige for planning out your stats. Generally, the easiest way to start off any crew is to dump some cheap blue gear on it. For this, we have Visuri Gunner Helm and Snow Launcher. I know the page says about $70 for each of these, but we're going to be using pixieship.com for referring to the real prices. You can reliably get both pieces for $75 total, and this will be the lowest cost investment you will have to get for 12 stat points. Once we have the gear on, it's time to start gym training. Following this section, I'm going to show you exactly how to gym train to get the results on this section. What we're looking at now is how far we can take this crew before we can no longer use any great consumables on it to get stat points. So combining both pre-workout and gear, we are sitting at 46.6 weapon stat. Not too shabby so far. So now we have reached the end of the gym journey. On average, we're going to be spending about 186 hours training this crew from 33 to 79. We have more than doubled her base stats, and there's not many more steps to go after this to bring her stats up any higher. Hero gear marks our next items to look at. You can generally find really terrible offstat gear like 7 weapon and 0.2 repair heroic gear for cheap. For those 2 extra weapon stats, it'll cost you a bit under what the cost is for the purple versions most of the time. Now it is time to go through the expensive part of this section. Topping Maiden's weapon stat off. Once you've completed her training, she'll be sitting at a 68.6 weapon stat. The reason why it's so expensive is the process you have to go through to be able to achieve those last 31 training points. For weapon stat, you will be using veteran guidebooks. They come at a cost of $150 on the cheap end. Doing some simple math, we come out to the tune of $4,650, all for 8.1 training points. Add an extra 10 books if you want to do double CRISPR. Most people stop before this point and are happy with a max gym trained or max training points crew and call it a day. If your pockets are deep or you just happen to get really lucky, you can acquire some double statted gear. Some aren't too bad if you pick up the low double rolls for a couple thousand, but if you really want to pay tens of thousands of bucks for the high rolls, this is the only way you can get more stat points onto your crew. For example, the highest side roll stat that you can get for a gigaloader is 6.7. The hunt for someone with a roll that high is its own journey. On top of that, it will run you well into the 40,000 to 50,000 bucks or more range. If you are generally curious about what the highest side stat possible is for each roll, I provide you the stats for each. Funnily enough, you can get a side roll on some pieces of gear that are higher than the base stat of the item. The calculation is done by whatever the highest possible base stat is in any slot, and then you multiply that by 75%, which is how you end up with a Q2D2 with 8 base pilot and 10.5 side roll. The special side rolls are locked behind Dove gear and tournament gear as far as I'm aware. To achieve these kind of training points, you need to start somewhere. To be able to access gold training with it only giving you perfect stats, you need to have either Fitness 203 or Education 203, which is accessed at Hole 10, Lab Level 9. This is my Saturn Mariner. She currently has no training points attached to her, and she has 0 fatigue. I will now show you the process starting from 0 to max training. We send our crew into the Academy, which gives us a new option under our crew. It is labeled Train. When you click Train, it shows you all the training regimen you have access to with the current level of Academy or gym. You will start with what we call 1 fatigue. To do that, click on any of the green training regimen and start it by paying the mineral cost on the bottom right of the pop-up window. Saturn Mariner is now in training for the next 45 minutes, but we need to stop her from doing that as soon as possible. So we're going to click on the Saturn Mariner and then the progress button. A new pop-up window will show up with her picture and say Training in Progress. You will want to cancel the training. Once you cancel the training, you can check on the crew's fatigue level by clicking on them. Right now she is at Fatigue 1, where instead of it showing a full smiley face, it's now showing a slight smirking face, which is what we want. Since we now have Fatigue 1, we can use some great consumables on her. I'm going to train her as an engineer, so for that, I'm going to use a great consumable called Standard Engineering Toolkit. Whenever you use a consumable, there is a chance that any of the other options for that consumable shows up whenever you use it. Because we want perfect stats, we have eliminated the possibility while we have Fatigue 1 for the first and only stat point. Find the great consumable you want to use and select it on the crew you fatigued. Because we did it right, we have only gained 1 training point in that particular stat instead of the other side stats. Note that you may need to use multiple gray consumables to get that very first stat point. From here, you have two options. You can either wait for the fatigue to wear off from the green training, which takes about an hour, or you can instantly remove it by using an espresso shot. Once the time has passed, you can click on your crew to verify it is at 0 fatigue by the smiling face above its head. Once it has a single stat point and is at 0 fatigue, you can start spamming gray consumables on the crew until it reaches the green and blue gym training threshold. For each of the crew tiers, there are multiple stopping points according to their training point cap. For 3 stars, it's only 70 training points, but for a legendary crew, it stops at 110. I provided the stopping points on the screen for you to know exactly when to stop spamming gray consumables. If your stat total is less than any of these thresholds, do not continue on to the next section, or you might end up with a stat you were not anticipating. Gray consumables are now done being consumed, and it is time for the long journey. Fortunately, you can rush the training with Steam/website boosts. You will now open the training window again and scroll slightly down to the blue section and select the appropriate stat. You will know if you have the right stat to train because it will be much higher than any other stat being offered during this training.
You will continue to train until you hit the blue training stopping points. Once again, I provided below the amount needed before you proceed on to gold training. For this section, it can take about 114 hours for training a legend crew.
We are in the last stretch of this section, gold training. Same as before, scroll down to the gold training if you have the appropriate room level and begin training. Each time you train a stat in gold, it will be 12 hours long. At this point, you will absolutely want to use espressos to drop their fatigue to 0, since it will take more than 12 hours before you can start training it again.
These are the max totals you should be at when you stop using the academy or gym for single statting a crew.
The final step in the process is now here. The goal is to use heroic tier consumables to get that last bit of training points on our crew. Before we can start using heroic consumables, we need to completely max out the crew's fatigue to guarantee 0 side stats. The quickest way to do this is to train and cancel in quick succession using the gold training 4 times. You will know you have reached max fatigue when you click on the crew and they have a ghost face over the top of them. The reason why we use heroic consumables at max fatigue is that no matter what fatigue you are at, you will at least gain 1 training point in the consumables training type. If we briefly take a look at Drumstick, you will notice that whenever you use it, it gives you a training bump for attack at 1% to 25%. The rest of them don't guarantee 0% as an option for their roll. So no matter how high your fatigue is, you can visually verify it will always get at least 1 training point in that specified stat. Since I did mention earlier that you can use a Steam/website boost to rush training, let's talk about it. If you rush your crew progress, it will gain X amount of training points toward the skill chosen following the guide. X can sometimes equal 0, and 0 being a result is much more frequent if you rush the crew near the end of blue and gold training. Another quick fact is that there is a known bug that has been around for years, that if you let training finish without fully rushing it, you can sometimes get a 2 times multiplier on training points gained. So, if you would have RNG rolled your way into getting 2 training points this time, there is a chance that you can get 4 instead by not finishing it off with rush. If your next question is, what if you only partially rush it because you have a small amount of boost left but not take the training to completion, what happens? Yes, you still have a chance for that 2 times multiplier once the training finishes. Not every crew you have, you want it to be 100% trained in one single stat. Like King Dong wants lots of different stats to make him effective anti-border and repair. The easiest way to accomplish this is to first build your crew at Pixel Prestige on the crew loadout builder. Since there is no dedicated repair training, you definitely want to use your repair consumes as your first 6 points. Then continue on to either attack, HP, or stamina, whatever your needs are for what crew you want ideally. Once you do get your repair at 6 and 27 points in another, it will equal 33, which is enough for you to get into blue training. For double statted crew, it's a bit easier because you just need to get 1 stat to exactly where you want it or to max training, whichever comes first. Then swap over to blue/gold training for the secondary stat. Just use whatever your stat total is at the moment for whichever training you need. Like if you wanted to get 37 attack training points first on King Dong and have 6 points of repair, that total would be 43, so you'd be safe to continue using blue training for health. When the stat total reaches 72, swap to gold. You can get your total training points higher than the max training threshold of the side stat but never max. You will need to finish it off with heroic consumables. What is crew seniority and why is it important? You can use crew seniority to force determine crew to respond to specific actions in a certain way. Let's say I wanted to designate a set of anti-borders or repair crew to share certain AI lines with each other, but I wanted a specific crew to respond to the first incident of that AI line trigger. The one with the highest seniority will go to that incident first. How do we determine who has seniority? We determine it by the name of the crew. The one with the lowest numeric or alphabetic name goes first. You can change their name with a name tag, which costs 1 white dust and 1 blue dust. Changing the crew seniority also changes their seating of the room they occupy. In this example, I want to hold off on instantly rushing my crew because I need to wait for all my boarders to load up into the mass teleporter, but I want to reduce the amount of time I have to wait for them to be loaded up. How I accomplish this is I need boarders toward the center and the rushers on the outside, but if I don't change the names, it would end up with both my big booms sitting on the left-hand side, my Cthulhu in the middle, and both my Meowies on the right. To prevent that, we need to change their alphanumeric names. Most people use some kind of system for determining who's repair crew, anti-boarders, origin defense, standard boarders, etc. These are designated by the numerical values shown in the names for each of these cats. Since 7 is the lowest starting digit in this room, Big Boom and Cthulhu will sit on the left. Since both of these crews share a first digit, the game checks the second digit or letter to see if it's different, and it is. 0 is lower than 1, so the Big Boom cat that has 70 at the start of its name will start the furthest to the left. We have 2 crew here with seniority tagged. Their first AI lines have them responding to a room that's on fire. Who's going there first? King Sejong will be responding first since he has a higher seniority, since 1 is lower than 4. Once you get toward endgame, you need to figure out what your ideal crew will be to fill your 28 crew slots. This is max capacity using Bucks rooms and max bedrooms. Each strat uses varying degrees of crew dedication to the core strat. Like Telspam, you should have at least 14 boarding crew. Pen spammers only need 12 crew and can dedicate the other 16 to supporting rooms. You need to determine how many crew you want to dedicate to ending the fight first. Once you have that figured out, the supporting cast varies wildly, and that's where most people get to be creative. If you are running a gunship, you will need lots and lots of weapon crew. The most popular choices to build out your core are GS, Snowmaiden, Lilith, and Mito, each having their own specific side jobs. GS can rush the Ion, Mito can anti-board GAs, Snowmaiden can freeze borders as an origin defense, Lilith has a decent crit special for helping Snowmaiden and Mito. These crew would be considered your core. With the introduction of crew collections, a variety of telespamming borders have varied. For your 14+, are you running Void? We'll load up on Rockies, Bright Voids, and Galactic Succubuses to rush your teleporter as your core. Still living in the past and can't let go of Ardent? Build up some Sire Ducks and get them ready to fire. Want to play a New Age crit border build and not roleplay death? Well, you can build toward that. You just have to know what you want. For missile boats, you can have anywhere from 12 to 15 slots to fill, but only Eva and Galactic Sprites are legendary and have a strong engineering stat. You have to get a little creative and maybe drop down a couple rarity tiers to find a decent engineering crew that has the specials you want, like Saturn Mariner. Carriers need a way to get their crafts out quickly. How many rushers do you want to dedicate to getting them out? What time frame is acceptable to you for full deployment? How many supporting crew do you want to dedicate to normal weapon rooms? These are questions you need to ask yourself. Many of you during wars have been at the mercy of the fleet donation pool, ending up with a random crew on your ship with the mindset that it's literally better than nothing. The most proven method to remedy that is one of 2 ways. You can find someone within your fleet and you can build legendary crew for each other, or if you're in a lower division, toss each other the best free-to-play crew that matches what they want. The second way, which is what I use, is to make a second account that you play as well, and you no longer have to worry about asking your trade partner for crew because you're now your own trade partner. Even though it may only be 3 borrowed crew, having good donation crew will absolutely swing certain fights into your favor. This is it for the guide. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you'd like to see more PSS educational content, like and sub. If you're new to the game, and you want to join a fleet, or if you want to grow underneath the Dynasty banner, come find me at discord.gg/thedynasty-PSS. Have a good one.